Today we're going to talk about congruent triangles. So triangles with the same shape and size are congruent. So if two triangles are congruent, then that means that all corresponding parts, which will include our angles and sides, are also congruent. So when triangles are congruent, we can write a congruency statement. And so we have to be really careful how we name our triangles here. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, means that angle A is congruent to angle D, so that is true in our picture. Angle B is congruent to angle E, which is true in our picture, and angle C is congruent to angle F, which is also true in our picture. So we always want to make sure that we are writing valid congruency statements. So again, they match all corresponding angles and sides. So in a congruency statement, I would be able to draw these two pictures for triangle ABC and triangle DEF, even if I didn't start out with the pictures, because I know that the order tells me which angles should be corresponding and therefore congruent, and which sides. For example, side AB should be congruent to side DE. Side BC should be congruent to side EF. And side AC should be congruent to side DF. And you will see in the picture that all of those statements are true. So it is very important that you have your triangle congruency statement in the correct order. Now, CPCTC is something that we're going to use in our proofs. And that is just a shortened way to say that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That says if we know two triangles are congruent, then we know that every pair of corresponding parts is also congruent. All right, so first we're just going to find angles and sides that are congruent, and then we'll write another valid congruency statement. That means that we might write the letters in a different order, but I will still make sure that the letters match up. So according to this congruency statement, angle J should be congruent to angle P, so I'm going to write that congruency statement. Angle K should be congruent to angle Q, and I'm finding this because they are in the same position in the congruency statement. So angle K is congruent to angle Q, and angle L should be congruent to angle R, because those are the third angles listed. For sides, I'm going to start with the first two, so JK is congruent to PQ. Then KL is congruent to QR. And finally, I'll use side JL, that will be the third side, is congruent to side PR. Another way to write that congruency statement, I could write this a variety of ways. The way that I'm going to write it for this one is I will start with K. So I'm going to write triangle KLJ is congruent to triangle. Here I'm just going to make sure that the correct angles match up. So I should start this one with Q. The angle that's congruent to L is R, and the angle that's congruent to J is P. So triangle KLJ is congruent to triangle QRP. I could have chosen to reverse these letters, so I could have said triangle LKJ is congruent to triangle RQP. That would also be a valid congruency statement. So right now you pause the video, find the congruent angles and sides for the second problem, and then write another valid congruency statement. You can resume the video to check your answers. Okay, so hopefully that was not too difficult. So go ahead and check your answers. All right, in problem 3, I have 2 drawings of my triangles and a congruency statement. So in order to complete the statements, I can either do what I did up here and just know that the corresponding angles that are in the same spot are congruent, and same thing with the sides, or I can go ahead and label the picture. I usually prefer to draw a picture and label that just because it's easier for me to see. But if you can finish these congruency statements just looking at your triangle congruency statement, that's fine also. So I'll start by labeling. So angle K should be corresponding to angle A. Angle P should be corresponding to angle Y. And angle M should be corresponding to angle C. Then I know that side KP should be congruent to side AY. Side PM should be congruent to side YC. And side KM is congruent to side AC. Okay, so now my picture is finished. Even though these triangles are flipped in different directions, I can easily glance and see which parts are corresponding. So side KM should be congruent to side CA. Okay, and again, I can take that information from the congruency statement, or I can look at the picture. So right now, you're going to pause the video and fill out the rest of the statements and resume the video to check your answer. Okay, so go ahead and take a second to check your answers. For letter F, the order of these 2 outside letters doesn't matter as long as you have the correct vertex. So if you put angle PMK, that would also be fine. That means the same angle, as long as the correct vertex is in the middle. And make sure that you have the correct triangle congruency statements for G and H, because the order does matter there. The order of endpoints for the segment does not matter. So segment CA is the same thing as saying segment AC, and the same is true for B and C. So if you had those in a different order, that's okay. The only order that matters is the triangle congruency statement. Okay, so to find missing measures of the triangles, you're going to use the corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So if triangle STW is congruent to triangle BFN, I'm going to go ahead and label which parts are congruent. So angle S is corresponding to angle B. So right now I know that angle B is also 67 degrees, so I can start there. I know that angle T is congruent to angle F. I don't know angle F yet, but I can find that information, and I'll use the fact that they're congruent when I can do that. And angle W is congruent to angle N. So I know that angle W should also be 82 degrees. So I'm going to label the picture again because I like to be able to see what I found already. So now I can easily find the missing angle, either angle F or angle T, by adding these 2 angles together and subtracting that from 180. So when I add those 2 angles together, I'm going to get 149, which means that my missing angle, so angle F and angle T, is going to be 31 degrees. So this is only asking me for angle F, so I'll go ahead and fill that in. If I had to find angle T, it would also be 31 degrees. Now we're going to look at the sides. So side BN, that's the first and the third letter of this triangle, should be congruent to side SW. So SW and BN. So I know that BN should also be 9 centimeters. I know that TW, so here are the second and third letters of that triangle, should be congruent to FN. So TW and FN, so I know that TW should be 14 centimeters. And finally, BF is right here, that should be congruent to ST. And I know that ST is 17 centimeters, so BF should also be 17 centimeters. All right, so you're gonna do problem 5, and we'll go over that one in class. Number 6, we're now solving for X, Y, and Z. So to do that, I'm gonna use my congruency statement. So UV Okay, so we are going to look at the congruency statement. So I know side UV should be congruent to side TS. So UV and TS. So here I can go ahead, I'll finish labeling the picture because that'll be easier. Side VW is congruent to side SR. So VW is congruent to SR. And finally, UW is congruent to TR. UW is congruent to TR. So now I'm going to have 3 different equations to solve for X, Y, and Z. So we'll start with UV. So 12x minus 7 should equal 53. When I add 7 to both sides, I get 12x equals 60, and x equals 5. Moving on to VW. VW and RS are congruent, so I'm going to set up that second equation, 5y minus 33 equals 57. When I add 33 to both sides, I'm going to get 90. 5y equals 90. So then y equals 18 when I divide both sides by 5. And finally, UW, which is 3z plus 14, equals 50. When I subtract 14 from both sides, I'm going to get 36, and then I divide both sides by 3, and z equals 12. So the only thing that you really need to make sure here is that you match up the correct corresponding parts of your triangles. So number 7, you're going to try. The only difference is we have angles here. So you can use your corresponding angles to set up equations to solve for x, y, and z. So you're going to try that one and bring it to class next time, and we will check that. And then we're just going to do number 8 together, and you will try number 9 on your own and bring that back to class as well. So for number 8, I don't have a picture already given to me, but I have a lot of information here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture. So I'll draw my 2 triangles, and these obviously do not have to be to scale, but I'm going to make sure that I label them in the correct order. So triangle DEF is congruent to triangle JKL, and I like drawing them so that the corresponding parts are exactly corresponding, so that this one's not upside down or anything, just because that's easier for me to see. So I know that DE is 18 and DE is congruent to JK. Here I have JK is 3y minus 21. EF is right here, that's 23. And EF is congruent to KL, so I'm going to look for KL. And I don't have any information about KL, so I'm going to leave that there. I know DF is 9x minus 23, and that's congruent to JL because they're corresponding. And that equals 7x minus 11. So let me make sure I got all of the information from that problem. So now I'm going to just go ahead and start solving. So first I know that this side and this side are, this side and this side are congruent. So 3y minus 21 equals 18. I'm going to add 21 to both sides, and I get 3y equals 39. Divide both sides by 3, and I find that y equals 13. Okay, and then the next information that I need, this 23 is kind of extraneous information. It's extra. It doesn't hurt to write it down, but I'm not actually going to use it to solve any part of this problem. I am going to use 9x minus 23 equals 7x minus 11. That will be my second equation. Right, I'm going to get x on the same side, so I'm going to subtract 7x from both sides. So I get 2x minus 23 equals negative 11. Then I'm going to add 23 to both sides. So 2x equals 12. Positive 23 minus 11 is 12. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2 to find that x equals 6. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing for 9, but you're going to use angles and sides, a combination of angles and sides. Just draw your picture, label whatever information you're given, and then hopefully setting up the equations should be the easy part. All right, so bring that back to class. Make sure you bring any questions with you.